Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today Sunil Gupta, the co-founder of QuNu Labs, which is credited to be the first firm in India to successfully develop commercial cybersecurity products using quantum physics. QuNu Labs is a pioneer in quantum cryptography, quantum encryption, and quantum communication products and solutions. Sunil has also worked earlier in Hughes Software Systems, as many of you would fondly remember. Sunil, welcome to the show and tell us, do you feel as proud as a peacock dancing all alone in the deep tech space where Indian entrepreneurs presumably have left a lot to be desired?
Yeah, it's an interesting time. Uh, I think I'll be very fortunate that we are working in this space, and I will tell you the story when we start from beginning. Why did this happen? It's not it was destined to happen, right? It is not a it's not by chance that has happened, right? Of course, because I come from the quantum field, I believe in quantum tech, right? We believe in something called quantum field, right? Which has very different aspect of uh, things, the way that things happen, right? So we'll talk about it later. Yes, it is a great feeling to be doing what we are doing for the country. It's a great feeling to uh, to really put India onto the quantum map of the world, right? And of course, it's exciting time for India because India is not only, as you would have seen in the recent conflict that happened with Pakistan, India is not only talking about it, right? India's indigenous technologies are making impact. So happy to be part of that journey of India's.
Excellent. And you started your career with CDOT, the Center for Development of Telematics, in 1987. The same year, the Reliance World Cup was hosted jointly by India and Pakistan. How did CDOT happen to you? What all did you do there? And how was your experience of working at CDOT?
So, if you allow me, I will just take you a little bit more back. I started my career not from C dot. Actually, I started my career in with a small company. Very interesting story. I passed out from RSC Trichy. I had a job in Chennai, but I didn't want to stay there for there because my mother wanted me back in Delhi because I'm a Delhi boy. And I happened to leave the job and come to Delhi. I didn't tell my father after he came to know about something that I have checked a job and has come back to Delhi. And but very interesting thing happened. I was actually, I think a couple of months later, I was at Prakti Madan standing in the queue, and there were two other gentlemen ahead of me, and we started talking to each other. And I realized that they were two IIT Kanpur guys, and they were setting up a startup. So startup in the sense that that time India was trying to build mini computers, right? Indigenous computers. And they asked me what you do, and I told them what I this thing, and they interviewed me standing in the queue. And then they offered me to join next morning, which was a Televista computer. So the Televista was known for TVs at that time. And there was a Wave DCM data product, and SCL used to make many computers. So this Televista TV company also decided to make, they hired these two guys. And so I was the fourth guy, but there was another guy from BITS Pilani, and I was the fourth guy who joined. And we started building mini computers for India, right? So that's the way my journey started. I was a R&D engineer, I was a hardware software engineer, as well as sales, because one day my boss called me and said, "Hey, Sunil, you have to sell this computer." Right? And I said, okay. And I put it in the auto, right? And I took it to a bank and started telling them about computer, right? So very interesting journey. So why I'm telling you all this story, because it connects well. After 40 years, I'm doing another quantum computing stuff, building not computers, but in the same computing field, but from a classical computing to a quantum computing as a full circle coming. Right. So that's the way it started, my journey. Uh, because I was a computer science and tech guy. So both we did hardware and software studied. And that is where I landed with my first, I would say, second job. And very interesting because that is where I started building products. I think that assignment actually started shaping my mind to building something for the country, building something new, something unique. And that somehow stayed with me all my career. And and my father, and how CDOT happened is a very interesting thing. I was very happy with what I was doing. And one day my father comes me and tells me, hey, there's a new company, CDOT has come up. And he had a colleague in his office. My father used to work for CSIR. He said his a colleague, his two sons from IIT Delhi have joined a very interesting company called CDOT. And so you should go and join that, right? But at that time, I was also exploring. My dad only had brought me that he wanted me to join DRDO, right? So there was a DRDL lab, which was a missile lab in uh, in Hyderabad, Andhra Pradesh. Under that time, the Abdul Kalam was the head of that lab, and my father wanted to me go and join that. But then, and I was all set to go after a week, right? And that is when CDOT happened, and I went for the interview. I got selected, right? And I found that obviously, that CDOT was again a very different company. The moment you enter the building, you find a very different vibes. Again, I said that I'm in Delhi and I prefer to stay in Delhi, so I chose CDOT. But CDOT was a very different role that I was doing because from R&D, and then I was coming to a systems group, right? Of course, I didn't know at the time of interview, but later on I was told that I'm going to join a systems group. I don't know what the systems group is, but later on when they told me, I found it exciting because systems group was a group within CDOT whose job was to not look at how we will build it, but the job was more on why are we building this and what are we building, right? Uh, and so which means it is not only about whether you're building right, whether you're building the right thing, right? So you have to write the specifications, you have to do a system. So it's a sort of a system engineering job. Very interesting, right? Area because that allowed me to think very differently, right? Rather than looking into the tech and how it is we are implementing and so on, it allowed me to look things very differently. And and that was probably one of the rarest skills that probably I acquired through CDOT, which probably helped me throughout in my career, right? I will tell you a little later how this had played a very significant role in what I did later on and where I am today, because it always made me ask very fundamental questions before starting any assignment, right? Why we are doing this, what impact it will create. So in CDOT, when I was there, of course, CDOT is like one of the best talent you can absolutely find in the country. And then one of the best leader in Sam Petroda was there, right? It was something a dream for a youngster like me. And everybody was, and the interesting part uh, is that, Prashant, is that everybody was better than me. I'm telling you honestly, everybody there was far, far better than what I was, right? So which meant that there was a great opportunity to learn from everybody, right? I had some of the top guys in my room. So Akbar Hotel, we were there. There used to be rooms, right? And you will have some 3, 4 guys sharing that room. Room in the sense that your desk will be there. And I had 3, 4 guys. All of them were exceptional guys, right? I've been very fortunate all my life that I had worked with. Every time I have been in, whether it's my subordinates, my peers, or I will always work with people who are far, far better than me, right? So I mean, very rare, very fortunate for to that happen. So I was part of a group called RAX. It's called Rural Automatic Exchange. That CDOT was known for that, right? And and I was part of the system engineering team, what we are building. And the stories were that this is going to revolutionize Indian economy, rural economy, because there was no communication systems in the rural area at that time. And if our villages are now trying to use this racks to connect remote villages to the districts, it had a huge potential. So after 3 years, I went to my boss and said, I want a sabbatical. He said, why? I said, I wanted to go to the village and see what is the impact of this product and actual that life. He said, no, no, you don't have to do that. I will give you a 3 months sabbatical in the sense as an assignment. I will give you a cameraman. I used to do a Bollywood cameraman. He got, there was some agency who came, and the four of us and 4 or 5 of us were out there for 3 months, all traveled different parts of India from Jodhpur, Srinagar, Assam, Kerala, Goa, Orissa, Madhya Pradesh, Bastar areas, wherever QuNu racks were there, right? And it was so mind-boggling for me. It changed my uh, perception of things that we look at it. Because when we visited those villages, and there were about 5,000 villages I visited during that period, right? And subsequently. And some of these villages you can't reach even during rainy season because the river would be flooded. And the only way you could do is cross the river. And we did that on horses at times, like crossing the river. And there were villages there, and the evening after 6 p.m. there's no light, right? So, but very interesting life. And when we went there, I mean, I saw people crying. The sarpanch will come and try to hug. Some people will try to come and touch feet. They were so, because their life were impacted so in such a big way, right? And then I realized that what product that we build is not just a product, right? It was really phenomenal thing that was changing, uh, you know, the lives of people. And somewhere, Prashant, design thinking came very late, right? But actually, the fundamentals of design thinking were actually right there, right? When I visited there, I saw the empathy of how do people empathize with the product, uh, what type of feedback we got. One of the stuff when I went there, there are a lot of failures of racks were there, right? And especially during the monsoon season. And when I visited there, I saw one of the reason was that the grounding, which was assumed to be very good, was not a proper grounding and earthing of the system. They used to tie the ground on a tap, thinking that tap pipe is going deep into the ground, right? And when the lightning would happen, because of lack of grounding, a lot of boards used to fail, right? That feedback came in, that got rectified, and so on. So this whole C dot to me is not just doing one part of the. it actually opened up so many avenues for me in the mind that and that is where I think I started enjoying, and I started looking at product engineering very differently, right? And so I think for me, and that's the reason I stayed there for about 7 years, did a lot of interesting things in C dot. Um, but yeah, it's one of the happiest time of my life. Prashant, might deviate a little bit here and there to tell you some interesting stories on the way. If I go too far away, that diverge, then please bring me back.
No problems, no problems. Be our guest, and regale the audience with your recollections. Clearly, you had an emotional connect with C Dot, and you would have probably said at that point of time that I'll stay with C Dot till I die. And yet, you left C Dot and joined Hughes Software Systems in 1995. So, first of all, why did you decide to leave C Dot? And what did Vinod Sood tell you which convinced you to leave a flourishing career at C Dot and join Plot 31 in Gurgaon, where this company called Hughes Software Systems was becoming a dream for many an engineer?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, none of the people who in C dot wanted to ever leave C dot, right? But as we say, right, things change, times change. The government had changed that time, right? Um, uh, New communication minister who had joined, he had a very different opinion about C dot. He had a very different plan for C dot. He didn't see that to be, see, it depends on how you see it, depends on the lens you use, right? C dot was about building something unique right, for India, about 36 crores in 3 years. Always, right? And I can tell you now as an entrepreneur that you always have a vision and you take some bets, right? It doesn't mean that things will happen in that timeline, but you're always a journey, right? And you don't know what will happen uh, on its way to the in your journey, right? Things to change and so on. But I think still believe that C dot had met their larger objective of what they wanted to. It's not only about giving a product to the nation. They actually created a R&D, right? Real first time probably real R&D was happening in the country, and not disregarding the work that DRDO and Bell and others have been doing. They've been doing also a lot of R&D work. But really, I would say true R&D, I would say it was happening. It really actually changed the paradigm shift for the country, right? It was never invested before that. India has never invested public money in R&D, right? Even today, we still say the money that India invests in R&D is too less, right? So, but when the new government came and the new minister came, their view of that was that you didn't meet your objectives in a given timeline or whatever money you wanted. So they started seeing this as a what do you call it, as a guys who were left alone to do whatever they wanted to do, right? And they need to be ranked, right? They need to be uh, uh, put under control processes and so on. I mean, one of the success reason of the success of C dot was that uh, the goals, um, the results were more important than the processes, approvals, and etc. Right? So that organization was designed very differently. C dot, right? Of course, the other our more illustrious colleagues of mine in C dot will tell you much more stories. But so I think and what happens in such companies, Prashant? Such companies exist because there is a vision, there is alignment, there is a passion, and there everybody is working towards a collective goals and so on. But when you start seeing that our seniors were a little distracted, they were also worried about it, what is happening in the company. We know Mao and yeah,
Adesh.
uh, Adesh had just left by then, right? So, so I think all the senior people had left, all the people we used to look up to, right? And and obviously we were still continuing, but we realized that this is going there's no. I mean, it was sort of saying that it will not be the same organization ever again, right? So it will become a more classical government organization, and it eventually did, right? So, so that is where obviously we were not actively exploring. That is where I got a call from Vinod saying that, hey, we are doing some interesting ICO program, large satellite program, and they're looking for somebody to lead a system engineering on, and we used to call it testing and validation team. And he said, would you like to come and join? Right? Obviously, working with Vinod and working with other C dot colleagues was definitely a huge attraction. Honestly, they were also paying very well, like compared to what C dot was doing. It was definitely a never heard of type of compensation, right? Um, and then, of course, working in a, of course, they're from working from, of course, I had worked in a private sector. I have worked in a much smaller private Lala company, right, to start my career. So for me, leaving CDOT and going to a private company, multinational was not a challenge, right, from that perspective, right? For me, okay, I'm going back to work with my colleagues, ex-colleagues, and working on something very unique, interesting. And then I looked at the type of people. I said, wow, what type of people work there? So I think that is where it happened. I think the Madhu Reddy was my boss. He was the guy who was heading a satellite mobile set one program that he used to run. And so that is where he interviewed me. And of course, Vinod was there. And they offered me. And I said, okay, there's something more interesting to learn here. Right. And that's the way Hughes happened.
Do you remember your offer letter salary when you joined Hughes?
No, yaar, I'm very bad in that, to be honest with you. Very bad. I will look. I still have the letter. I will look at it and send you, right, the numbers. But it was, I think, probably a 2x or 2.5x of what I was getting, if I remember, right? Or probably more than that. And of course, there was a government scales in C dot, and here it was different. But I think that was only one aspect of it, to be honest with you. I've never looked at salary as the main thing ever in my life, right? Salary to me was a outcome of what we, but there are more other interesting things that you do, right? And fortunately, all my career, and that is true for you and everybody else, that we always had enough. Right? For our family, we could save a little bit, and it was always enough for us, right? So I think that's what I will say. So as I was I realized that I would be able to take care of my family, save something, and of course, working for a multinational company, it didn't have many multinational company that time, right, in India. I'm talking about 1995, right? So it was something very interesting. I joined C dot in 1988. Yeah. And then, so it was 7 years journey. Yeah.
Okay. So you partially alluded to it, but when you joined Hughes, what was a mandate given to you by Vinod Sood, who was the head of the engineering? And looking back now, and that's an important point, do you think you achieved that mandate, or do you think that something could have been done even better?
Yes, a good question. So life changed very significantly for me in Hughes because I came in because they were trying to build a very large system, right? It is a ecosystem, which was a satellite communication system. It was a geostationary system, right? They were geo, or I don't even remember. So, um, and it was a consortium, right? The multiple organizations were coming together. We had NEC doing something, we had Ericsson doing something, we had HSC doing the satellite part, we had HNS doing the ground station, and then some other companies building mobile station and mobile devices and so on. So it was a consortium. And I think the challenge was, of course, it didn't start that way, but very quickly it turned out that I had to be the guy who has to put together the requirements from the system perspective, that how eventually will all these different consortium member will give their software, how will it eventually integrate, and how will it achieve what it is expected to achieve. It was very interesting. First time probably I used the requirements management tool, right? Because imagine there were thousands of, I think there were some 88,000 requirements that had to be managed, make sure that each of the different consortium member understand these requirements very well. There are ICD documents that were interface documents that were done. And so it was very interesting thing. And they were such a illustrious um, people working on it. I mean, as Prabir Datta, Abhijit Ghosh, Saurabh Garg, Madhu Reddy himself. There's so many of them. I mean, I was in awe of these people, right? They were just looked like to me at that time they were on different planet, right? And Working with such people, learning with them, and just observing them, they're working. It was a huge experience for me, right? So of course I learned a lot of things from them, learned from the customer because I happened to spend time in HNS as well. So it actually um, allowed me to think that how do you build a very large networks or large systems, right? And a lot of this knowledge is being used today when we are today in QuNu, we are trying to set up a large quantum safe networks, telecom networks, right? And today this is the way the whole life comes around, right? Today we are talking about building a quantum safe satellite based quantum networks, right? So it goes back to whatever we learned and what we did there. Um, so I think the life changed very quickly. And then after 2 years, it took another turn when one morning Kannan had taken over that time, if you remember. And one day he came and said there was a manager who was supposed to lead a particular, I think, module or something like that. And he, a new guy would join, and he probably after a week it didn't turn up. So Kannan came to me and said, "Hey, you have to become a manager of leading this whole thread." So from doing a system level work, I started doing a sort of a leading the development team. And then I became director of engineering, and it went on. Many things happened. Then I became eventually the head of one of the mobile set programs, right? That I was leading and had a large team, I think about 150, 200 people. So it was very interesting thing. I think like C dot, Hughes was again a very organization who will give you a lot of opportunities, who will look at people who are excited, passionate to do new things. They will take a risk of giving things to people who wouldn't have the probably the past experience of doing that. But I think that's what Hughes was. I think a lot of credit goes to Vinod and other leaders who were there, and I think that's what probably makes made Hughes so special. So, and then eventually, at some point of time when we I think it was 1996, 1997, I think, 1998, when we were trying to integrate this whole system now together. And then I had to move to HNS and stay there for a couple of years because now I had to, on ground, I have to ensure that all the requirements from these people are getting aligned. We are integration problems are coming down and system is coming up. And and it was a very tough time because at one point of time there were more than 30,000 defects that need to be fixed in a very short time. Yeah, but it was very interesting. Then when I went to HNS, then again, what type of people they were there. It was mind-boggling again to sit in those meetings and just listening to them. I was fortunate that I used to get called in those meetings because the integration manager, I'll sit there and just listen what they talk about it, right? Um, Things like how do you even um, talk to customer about a defect, right? Just give you a very interesting example. Uh, we were sitting in a meeting and and the customer was supposed to come down very heavy on us because there were a lot of defects there. And we would normally get normal course, we will get defending ourselves and this thing. But I was with a guy who was so good, right? And that uh, he stood in front of customer and he said, customer, hey guys, I have 30,000 problems, right? Bugs. I can't solve all of them. So you as a customer, why can't you help me identify 5 or 6,000 defects that you think are important and which we must fix? I want you to be partner in this, in my system. This is a very different aspect of interacting with client rather defending yourself saying why you're not being able to do and making a new timelines and give, making customer a part of your problem, right? And taking his help to sort your out, find answers is something that I learned in that meeting. It still stays with me. Yes, and then it helped me later on when we were doing a PQT and many other things. But these are subtle stories that I realized, and there are many such stories that and this was what Hughes for me, right? It was a great people. Almost everybody was more accomplished than I was. Great environment. Just sitting and observing in meetings, you could learn so much, right? So of course, it was a great experience, and then stayed in Hughes for about 12 years, right? And then I had also a journey where I moved from Gurgaon to Bangalore in 2005, right? So I'll stop here. Maybe you have any follow-on question for me on this. I'm happy to happy to answer.
Are we enjoying this, Sunil? So, I've got plenty of questions in store for you. So, at HSS, you were the leader who was in charge of testing, as you mentioned, PQT, the product quality testing, the proverbial gatekeeper, the final frontier beyond which the software went live in the field. Now, due to the nature of the job, the testing in charge sometimes tends to become, shall we say, unpopular because he may hold a release while the release managers would want to ship it out regardless. Do you recall any such situations which you had to go through? Do you recall any instance where there was tension between you, the software release, and everybody else out there?
Uh, yes and no. I will tell you what the interesting part was, but you first understood. I'm sorry, I'm telling you some stories here, but I'm just for the audience. I just want to understand why it happened, right? PQT. So I think we had at some point of time, HSS realized that we can't be solely dependent on captive for HNS. We have to build our own products. That is where they probably chose the one of the best person, Gulshan, to lead that, right? Um, and of course, we were started building our own stack, S323, SIP stack, and many other things that we were doing, GPRS stacks, and a number of other things. Though I think as it happens with everybody, as we built our own product, product engineering, product validation, and it's very different thing, right? Rather than doing engineering. Because when we were in Hughes, we used to build software, we used to test it, but of course, eventually customer used to integrate, test, get everything done, right? But here you have to own from right from specification, development, testing, product release, everything yourself. Obviously, we had challenges in the beginning, right? A lot of defects would come, a lot of issues come. And that is where Mao and Vinod discussed and said, maybe we should form a PQT. So I remember that when Vinod and Mao brought it up to me and say, hey, we want to set up a product qualification testing team. I was doing MobileSat at that time, and I said, okay, I will do that. And then I had a lady called Anuradha, probably one of the best person that I have worked with, and I got her lead that rather to do that, and very quickly she formed a great team. Some of the best people in the industry pulled out from Airtel and many other companies. Um, Anil Goyal, Anil Srivastav, Rajesh Pandey, Siddharth Pant, and many more, right? And we fortunately built a team. And of course, there were challenges. Of course, always there are challenges. Engineering used to do, they will always on the Friday evening, they will give the release, knowing that it's not tested. But that gives him the weekend to fix the problems. And my guys used to come and crib in there on Friday evening, 7 o'clock, they will give the release for you to validate. But that's for the job, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to really release the product on time. We used to do that. That is where we realized that we need to change the process, right? Because a lot of time scenarios makes you think and innovate, right? And that is where Anuradha and I discussed and said we need to automate a lot of our testing. This is the theory I gave them to Anuradha and team. I say when they give you the release, you should be able to validate in the next 1 hour and give it back to them. It doesn't meet your criteria, right? And you can only do that if you run some basic. So don't do, because what happened in the software typically, uh, when you start the testing, you start testing in the strong areas of the product, right? Which also are incidentally also tested well enough by the development team. But there are a lot of areas which are you identify as you go around in the testing with performance, installation issues, and non-functional requirements, right? So idea was that we actually thought, okay, why don't we look at the weak areas of the product first and give it back to them immediately, saying it's still not ready, so that they work on the weak end of the product, and then they give us a better product next time. So we had to innovate our process. We have to change the whole product life, the testing life cycle. We had to bring the automation in. We actually did the first automation using I forgot the name of the platform. That was a very, it was it was a Selenium, on a Selenium based, we built an automation product. So it went from there, right? And it started getting better. We started improving, right? And the interesting part was because I was coming, as I told you, from a product mindset, from looking at the system aspect. I think Anuradha also came from, Anuradha was also part of the C dot. She used to do the same systems group. So she had built a team and a mindset in the PQT team that we will not look at the defects in terms of what the coding defects are. We used to go and look at, in fact, I used to know a lot of discussions used to happen with the engineering team, product team, where we used to discuss about the interpretation of the requirement by the product team itself. Hey, your interpretation of this specification, your interpretation of this message, your interpretation of parameters is not correct, right? And initially, of course, the product team used to think, hey, this is not your job, right? That's my job. But but we had some very strong guys and the very good guys, a very logical, rational people. And when we actually started discussing with Gulshan, and then there used to be I stand very bad with names. There are a lot of other very interesting people in product team. Then and they were also very rational and logical guys. So they started realizing that this value of PQT is far more than just providing a testing, right? They are coming and challenging us on things that we might have missed it, right? So I think that way where the right respect for PQT and each other happened. And that is very essential in teams when we work, because if you have respect for each other as a teams, then we deliver our best to the result. Now, what happened, Prashant, because of that? a lot of our stack that used to go to Nokia, Alcatel, and so on, we also started giving to some of those customers. I heard that from Mao at that point of time. They came back and said, hey, how come is that when we take your stack and test our product, we never find a lot of issues in your stack, but we find a lot of issues on our product. You must be doing something good, right? And that is where I think probably Mao or Vinod had told him that, hey, we have an internal good testing team. That is what it led to. And then Nokia and Alcatel then later came back and said, hey, why don't you do a testing services for us? Can you really do testing services and test our products, right? Rather than just giving good quality products of yours. That is where a testing services business started in Hughes, right? Which became a significant business later on, right? So I think so that is the way it was. Of course, there was tensions at time, right? But it was healthy. I would say it was very healthy. It led to improvements on both sides. It helped us to improve, and this was also the reason, Prashant, I'll tell you why we could become CMI level 5, because it started a journey, because you need to set up all these processes, defect management, you have to do analysis of defects, finding defects early, root cause, and a number of things that you have to do, right? And I think somewhere the foundation of CMMI in HSS started happening around that time, right? So that's the way I will put it, right? This had a huge repercussion while it was a small activity, but how it led HSS to grow and evolve itself as a not only a product engineering company, but a very high quality product engineering company, right? It happened that way.
And yet, when HSS started the Nokia PCU project, which was a very high profile project for Nokia in 2001, why was the product qualification testing team, that is your team, completely ignored for that project? Were you even consulted to set up a validation team for such an important project for Hughes, or do you regret not being part of that project?
To be honest with you, Prashant, I don't remember. Um, I didn't get time to check on that with my team, but I don't remember. Maybe I think um, I don't know. I mean, maybe Vinod can answer that better. I have to check with him. To be honest with you, I'm not able to recall, to be honest with you, that whether we considered it didn't happen or it was not considered at all. I think I do, as far as I remember, I think it was never brought up to PQT. Reason could be anything. I'm not aware of the reasons. Um, but maybe because the PCU team themselves set up their own internal team, right? As to validate, or maybe the mandate for the PCU team was not to test, but just to deliver the product and give it to the Nokia, and they would do it themselves. So sorry, I'm not aware of that. So not able to comment on that part. But I will definitely note it down. I will go and check on that.
No worries. Perhaps Vinod would comment after watching this video. So let's see, let's watch out for his comments. But let me recall an incident which happened in 2001 at Hughes. Anil Srivastav was working in your team and he resigned. You told him that he was your blue-eyed boy and that his decision to resign was wrong. You went ahead further and predicted to him on his face that he would be back to HSS soon. And sure as hell, Anil Srivastava was again knocking at your doors at HSS back after 3 months. So please tell us why you considered Anil as your, as I said, blue-eyed boy, why he possibly resigned, and how did you predict correctly that he would be back soon?
So Anil was definitely one among the top guys that I had, and the many more blue-eyed boys had, and the girls. But I had everybody. I mean, as I said, I was so fortunate. All of them were so good. And so to me, why I said that, because I always felt HSS was a family, right? And if somebody in your family is trying to explore something out, and and I felt that probably his reasons for looking out probably were right, but I also know that somebody who's worked in HSS for so long, it's not very easy for somebody to adjust outside to get that environment, right? And I realized that Anil was not a guy who would just go for money or go for work. He also valued relationships, also valued community. He also valued HSS, and he was one of those very highly passionate person for HSS, right? And he had a huge regard for that. And that's the reason I said, I'm going to leave this position. In fact, I remember I said, not going to replace anybody in your place for next 3 to 6 months. And, and so that I give you an opportunity to come back. Right. And that's what he did. He called me and said, "Hey, Sunil, I want to come back." I said, "Okay." As I promised, I have not hired anybody. So, so that's the way. And I think it didn't happen only for Anil. I think we used to say that in Hughes, I think probably we had more than 30, 40 people who had come back, right? Left and come back and had a second stint at Hughes, right? So I think that was specialty of Hughes, right? So that people leave that one, go out, and they will never find themselves aligned with anything else, because once you have a perfect alignment, it's very difficult to get a better alignment anywhere else, right? So it's a far more bigger thing than just a job. So so I think that's the reason. And of course, I didn't want to lose Anil. So so I left an option open for him. This is a lot of time what happens is, if the person goes and you just hire somebody else, then person also thinks that, oh, I think his chapter is over. So I made him feel that his chapter is not over yet, right? So I left that umbilical cord there so that he could come back. Good for him, and he came back, and then from there he went to UK. He had his new career, new journey for himself, right? That he did. So happy for him, happy for what he did.
Excellent. And I'm sure Adesh should be jumping up with joy listening to you and your strategy. But in ICO and Thraya projects for HNS, you had to deal with two stalwarts of Hughes with diametrically opposite personalities, the sagacious Prabir Datta and the energetic, eccentric genius of Avijit Ghosh. I'm sure you had no choice but to interact with both of them for your test strategy at a system level. Can you recall to us how you handled them both, possibly differently, and any interesting incidents around your interactions with them?
So as I said, I was odd of them, right? They both of them, they were so good at that. So to be honest with you, I used to learn from Pradeep. Pradeep used to come and tell me so many things. He was so good in understanding the whole satellite comm, because they're working for quite some time in this whole architecture of the design of the whole satcom, that ecosystem that we built. So largely I was learning from them. Obviously, I used to interact with them as a peer, saying, "Hey, how would we do that?" They used to review it. But you're right, Prabir was far more balanced, calm, very open. It's very easy when you ask for help, he will be there. Avijit was more analytical, more brilliant, I would say, and highly unpredictable. When you talk to Avijit, you won't know what he will respond, right? And but that's what he was, and that's what he was. Absolutely guy with absolutely lateral thinking, right? One of the best that I've seen. Um, uh, and that's the reason he was so popular in HNS, because he used to look at things very differently. Um, and but that's the beauty of HSS, right? We had some of these people. Later on, I worked with Abhik. Also happened to work with Abhik. I happened to work with Saurabh Garg. So brilliant people, right? I mean, I just and yeah, I sometimes I wonder, right? But that was HSS, right? So to be honest with you, I mean, I don't have any specific example. I only understand. Remember, my memory is about going them for help, trying to learn. They will tell me what they're doing. I think that's the way it was, right? So
Absolutely. So, what is your message to the young folks and even middle level engineering managers who want to make a career out of testing in the field of software?
see, testing is a very narrow word, to be asked me. If you ask me, I never advise people to look at testing as testing, right? And that's the way I always looked at it. To me, it was always about, um, and as I said, understanding what we are building and why we are building, right? And once you understand that, right, what we are trying to do, or why we are trying to do what we are trying to achieve, and then testing is sort of discovery, right? You discover the specifications, you of course write the specifications, you understand requirements, you understand implicit requirement, there's understand explicit requirements. Uh, to me, testing is also about wearing different hats. So I used to say de Bono six thinking hats, right? When you wear a functional hat, you like the functional requirement. When you look at a, a, a green hat, then you look at the product very differently. When you go a red hat, you will look at the risks the product have, right? And that allows you to look at, discover the different aspect of product that used to come up. And I think that is where my message to guys have been that don't think testing is a downstream process. Testing was never a downstream process. Some people made it that way. Testing is throughout the whole life cycle, and you should look at it at the upstream process as well. And the real value you generate as a test engineer or a validation or whatever system guy, you don't add value by testing, because testing is a costly thing. You already done the mistake. You're paying money now to the test team to find the defects. Right? So it's a waste. If you spend that time and energy upstream processes to validate requirements, right? And if you spend more time upstream, design defects, and I will give you a very interesting example, real example that helps you save a lot of pain and effort and time later on, right? So I think that's what the philosophy used in PQT. That's the philosophy used in when we did testing services, right, for the customer. And I think that is where we even the project uh, the project we did for HNS later on when I was director engineering, we actually followed the same process. I'll tell you when then Satya's quality was probably if he's listening to this later, he would remember. We had actually Mon Rangan was running that project at that time. We had actually got a project from HNS do a uh, to build a GPRS based ground system, right? And it was for, I think it's for Inmarsat, right? So the project was this was fixed price contract, $10 million. I think it was a $10 million deal to be delivered in 12 months. And it had a bonus clause of it deliver in time with some defect, less than some defect, we get a $4 million bonus on that, right? And there was some penalty clause as well, right? So, and because it was like that, we had no option to fail. And one of the criteria there, if I remember correctly, is that our exit criteria was that we had to run this whole system without the hardware. It was a software stack. You run that non-stop for 1 month. If there's no defect found in, you run a performance load test, and if it's find 1 month without defects, then is the exit criteria for you to send it to the HNS, right? It was very rare things to do. And so when we started with that time, Satya used to share about, if you remember, Prashant, you were one of the guys who used to do a lot of quality aligned work. So we used to find out how many defects at each stage. We used to predict how many defects we'll find at each stage of the developmental design, coding, and so on. And then, and until we found those defects, then only we'll go exit criteria to go to the next stage, right? So I used Satya time, and then we figured out that if I remember data, there were about 13 defects we were supposed to find in the design stage. And we found 7 actually during our own testing. So the team had come to us and said, hey, let's start coding. And I remember I discussed with Mon Rangan and then a couple of other guys. Satya was also part of it. And we said that, no, there are still 6 expected defects. Let's go and do code reviews again, reviews again. We got somebody else outside. I don't know whether Vijay did it or I don't remember that. I think got to a couple of more guys to look at it. And we actually found 5 more defects. And then only we went to that, right, to the next stage. And later on, we found that, of course, we did. If I think 2 of those defects, if we would have found at the design level, it would have cost us a lot more, probably 6 months of delay and a lot more cost to fix those defects later on, right? So I think this is what the key part is. If you're spending upstream process, you're doing the right thing, and testing or whatever validation starts right there. If you do that, then eventually you will add real value to the process, right? Otherwise, you're a cost, unwanted cost, right? And just to complete the story, I think we eventually delivered it in 1 year. The test passed without any 1 month of the test went, and that later on I came to know when it went to the field also there were not more than 2 or 3 defects were found in the field, right? So it was, and we got the bonus of 4 million, right? So it was interesting. So I hope the message I've been able to communicate the message that testing starts right from day one and not at the when the software is ready.
Wonderful. And that's a good message to all the young engineers out there and the managers. Now, in 2007, when Hughes Software Systems HSS had already transitioned to Flextronics and Aricent, it was a flourishing company with tons of projects and system integration and testing needs, were in plenty. Why is it then that you decided to quit HSS the same year? Was it a voluntary decision or not?
So so I'll tell you what happened. In 2005, uh, our US, sorry, our Bangalore unit was there, right, for a few years. But then they were struggling to have leaders there. We were not able to build the leadership team in Bangalore. Um, and I was anyway doing testing services with for CP Murli at that time, for Alcatel and Nokia and so on, which he used to run. And so he offered me, he said, Sunil, you want to come to Bangalore? There's a leadership position here, and we want you to come because you stayed in Gurgaon for so long. If you come here and be part of the Bangalore Center leadership team, you will be able to communicate a lot of stuff, learning and other things to the people here because still the Bangalore, even despite of several years, I think Bangalore Center was still well not fully integrated, I would say 100% into HSS, right? The way we used to run in Gurgaon. So I saw an opportunity. I said, okay, there is an opportunity for me to share stories and see learnings and so on. Opportunity for me to work in Bangalore. Bangalore also, I was ambitious all the time. I felt that at that time that Bangalore is a city of opportunities. And I felt that I would have a much bigger learning growth, even if I sit in some of the um, meetings and listening to the people here in Bangalore, different companies, you will learn a lot, right? So I took that. It was difficult decision for me, for my family, because my wife was a central government officer. She had to take a lien and then go. My kids, all of my wife was belong to Delhi, and we had to relocate ourselves. But I think in hindsight, it looks like it was a good decision. I moved to Bangalore, but very interesting thing happened. As I moved to Bangalore, around that time, HSS became Ericent, right? And just before that, we acquired Hughes, Flextronics had acquired Hughes. They had acquired Tenet Technologies with R.K. Mishra, had a small company. We had acquired Futuresoft. And then also they had acquired Decanet, that was one of our ex-C dot colleague. He had a testing organization called Decanet, right, in Bangalore. And then we had acquired another company called Immuse. Um, so now Amuse, the moment we acquired that, most of the founders, I'll tell you what the Amuse was. Amuse was a very unique company, $20 million revenues. They were small startup from Bangalore. They used to do audio video codecs, multimedia. And what they had done is they'd taken a TI platform 2420, OMAP platform 2420. They ported their codecs on that platform because those platforms were used by all the top Nokia, Samsung, Motorola, all those people used to work on the TI platform, their smartphones, right? Smartphones were just coming up that time, right? 2005, 2006. And so they took that, put their codecs on that platform, built a reference applications, right? And they went to all the OEMs and saying that, hey, see how good your audio video is. And they were top quality because they had a lot of innovation in their uh, codecs, right? Because of that, they had all the top 10, 12 OEMs were their customers, right? Samsung, LG, Panasonic, Motorola, all of them. And and at some point of time, their software codecs used to go in more than 1 million smartphones, right? Every smartphone, right? Whether it was a chocolate for LG, Samsung, Nokia, N10, and all of them, right? They had that software. So that was very unique. But founders had decided to quit. right? They wanted to do something else. That is where CP Murli asked me to head that as the organization, became sort of a CEO of that company. Again, all of them were so accomplished, great guys, and real product. They were really building product, right? Not product engineering, some for somebody else, but they were building for themselves. Real IP they were building. So that was very interesting for me. I got immersed in that particular project for 2 years, learned a lot. I think somewhere there, uh, a curiosity of doing something startup probably got seed there, but it was probably dormant there for a long time. But I really enjoyed that environment, building something, taking to clients, um, articulating the value proposition, winning that deal, delivering it on a tight timelines, and then seeing the product being used by the customers, a huge thing. So it was, of course, we were doing some other projects as well, but that was a learning that I had. So I was doing services also at that time. I was doing services. I was doing product as well. There's a time when I think Mao had just left. Arun, I think Vinod was also leaving. So, and I was asked to choose by the management whether you want to be part of the products or services, because I think there was reorg happening. Uh, Sanjay Devan was trying to do products, and I think Mao was supposed to do services or something like that. I don't remember. And I realized because I was doing both, and I at that time Muse was under a different guy called Deepak Malhotra. He came from a very accomplished guy again, IIT Delhi, Stanford. He was a import to us from, I think, the company they acquired from Flextronics, right? He came from there. uh, he was my business head, very accomplished guy. And he was so I became part of the mobile business. I think they get a mobile business unit, something like that. Um, and I think that is where I had to decide whether to become a part of the services organization or that organization. I was not comfortable with choosing that, to be honest with you, because I felt that the flexibility for me, because it both the things were very, I was very passionate about it. Um, but this change that was happening around that, now you would have seen a flavor. Same thing happened with C dot. Same thing happened probably with Arisent. When I see something of this sort happens, I try to come out of it, right? And around that time, again, around that time, I was not looking out actively, to be honest with you. But I realized that my time here is probably coming to end soon. That is where another HSS stalwart, right, Amitabh Roy, who had joined Symphony Services. I got a call from him, right? That hey Sunil, through somebody he gave me a message, and he says, Sunil, we are a product engineering company, small Symphony. It was again a Ramesh Wadhwani. I don't know whether you heard of his name, a great Indian entrepreneur, billionaire in successful entrepreneur in Bay Area. So he had set up this company here. He had actually a company before that called Aspect, which he has sold for about $7 billion to i2. So one of the largest sales for Indian company around that time it happened, right? Uh, there was an ERP company. So now he wanted to set up a product engineering company and Symphony Services. That is where I became part of it because I saw something new to do and the customers were still huge. We still have multinationals, a lot of customers, but here all the customers were in all part of the world, Europe, US, and the customers were also very because they used to work for a lot of young companies at that time. There are a lot of startups, interesting startups. They have Google, AOL, Apple, a lot of companies were customers. I suddenly realized that we are going to go work on outside telecom, right? That's what you used to do in Hughes. There's going to be a wide range of customers and wide range of field areas that I will get to work. So I joined there. I did very interesting thing. I did first DevOps platform at that time in 2009, and nobody had done that. We had built a mobile application development platform in 2009 when I built the first mobile app on that on an iPad and took it to a customer, one of the large bank in India. They looked at it and said, very interesting, but why would I use mobile app? Right? So I'm talking about that time when, when people didn't know what to do with mobile app, right? And so a lot of those first of its kind things that we did, um, very interesting journey again. I got into do a business consulting there, right, which I've never done before. Got to work on cloud AI. It was not AI per se, but analytics. And then that time, and cloud had just this thing. So that was the reason I did, because of um, every good things have a time to end, come to completion. At around that time, I was able to be very fortunate that before actually the previous thing had ended, something more beautiful, something bigger, something more exciting had spawned up. So it was naturally I went from another joined yeah, Amitawa. There were another very interesting 5 years. I got to spend a lot of time in United States, work with a lot of great startups who eventually got acquired by Oracles and a number of other companies. So very interesting work.
Awesome. And you rose to become the Chief Operating Officer of Edgeworth Stroke Finacle, which is essentially Infosys, where you worked from 2012 till 2016. I heard that you also interacted with Narayan Murthy, the veteran founder of Infosys. So please tell us something about Narayan Murthy, since you have seen and interacted with him firsthand, apparently. And further, what do you think about his recommendations of a 70-hour work week for the Indian IT engineers? Do you subscribe to that personally?
So, so I never thought that I will ever join Infosys, right? I never thought that was a company meant for me. I had a very close friend who worked for me in C dot, Ishwar Halali, and very good friend. He still is a good friend. I used to tell him, why are you in Infosys? It's a services company, you know. But he was a die-hard Infosys fan, right? So I never thought. I used to interact with him, but I used to laugh with him. I said, why would I join a product engineering guy? Why would I join a services company, right? And that was an IT services company. To be honest with you, it was an arrogance on my part, but I felt that I was not meant for that life, right? Um, so so he called me one day, and I will tell you later on, because after Hughes and why I so I was with Logica for in between for about seven months, and the and I'll tell you the story a little later. Um, so when I was in Logica, I got a call from him. He said, Sunil, uh, uh, there's a great opportunity for you in Infosys. And I joked again. I said, you tried 5 times before. The sixth time you're trying. And my answer is still same. He said, no, this time is different. Mr. Murthy will like to meet you. I said, my answer is still no, but I will meet him because he's an NRN, right? So I will just take his autograph and come back. So that was the intent. I will go and get out of my niece knew that I'm going to meet him. So she had a request specifically. She gave me her autograph book saying, please get me NRN's autograph, right? So so I went there to meet him, and of course he's a he's a maverick, right, himself, and so I had heard about it. Again, I mean, everybody I meet, they're so accomplished and awe of him. The first few minutes, I was just looking at him. I don't know what to say, right? Is that Narayan Murthy over there, right? And so he said, what do you do? I explained him, and so he said, you're a product engineering guy. I said, yeah, that's what I do, and that's the reason I don't see myself in Infosys. And he said, no, I call you for something different. In fact, we have a lot of um, yeah, fragmented products organization, and I want them to bring it together, and we want to create a product organization within Infosys. He said the future of services is, he told me a very interesting concept. He said the world is moving where you have to servitize the product and productize the services, right? And gold dust, right? So, right, and that was Narendra Modi, right? Just few words from his mouth will change you, will make you sit down, sit back, and think, and that's what the whole world started doing. He said we had to productize services. We have been doing a lot of products, platforms, and that is where you have to come in and see if you can help me with that, right? Um, I was still not very convinced because I asked him some a question which he didn't like, uh, but he answered it. I said, Mr. Murthy, if you are going to do product organization, then you will never be able to attract good people, right? Because product is all about passionate people who are head down, who's trying to take a risk, who are a lot of time will fail. Product is all about building a product or something like that. Doing is a lot of time is about that you should be ready to accept failures. You should be ready to experiment. You're ready to know that you may not succeed what you're doing. And and if you want to build that organization, you have to get some of the very different type of people. Is your recruitment organization, is your recruitment engine, your culture, everything is aligned, or for me to hire some of the best people, not a 3 lakh salary a year that Infosys used to pay, but 2.6 lakhs at that time. I should be able to hire somebody at 14 lakhs. Would you allow me to do that? He said 14 lakhs to bahut zyada hai, right? Of course, he said in English. He says, but give me a proposal what you do, right? We'll look at it. So, and then something that he told me that convinced me partially. He says, Sunil, I'm not just selling you and somebody else. I am rejoining. He shared with me at that time that he was outside Infosys at that time. He had retired. He said, I'm going to come back into Infosys and rejoin. And and can you really come and work with me, right? So it was a great thing. Of course, at that time, what happened is, again, is a fortunate, I would say, what happens. Logica uh, was actually getting acquired by CGI. So when I joined after Symphony, I joined. I'll tell you the reason later why I did that. But I joined Logica. But after 2 months, I joined Logica. Logica got acquired by CGI. And the meeting I had with the CGI head was convinced me that it's not the organization for me, right? And so at that time I was just thinking, okay, what do when this it comes to my lab, right? Infosys. So that's where it happened, and then I landed up joining Infosys, became part of the EdgeWove. So EdgeWove was the company that we brought in Finacle and a few other things together to build a EdgeWove. Just to give you a perspective that in EdgeWove, I could hire a guy who had a Microsoft offer, right? And convince him to join my org and build one of the India's first robotic process automation platform and a few other things just because we were trying to build a very different organization, right? It was still a very odd baby, I would say, because Infosys still had 100% one subsidiary of Infosys. It was not easy. It was challenge all the time because when we do product and we were doing that, and and my boss was a German CEO, right, in Edgeworth. And this guy had a very different theory. That time, Infosys used to give BlackBerry. So he will come and say, hey, if you are selling a latest tech, right, to a customer and you carry a BlackBerry, nobody's going to buy from you. And you should buy an iPhone. Infosys didn't have the policy for people to buy iPhone, right? So I would have those type of challenges, right, to do, because here we are trying to be a cutting edge product company within a services company who's known for its processes, systems, governance, and so on. So you imagine what type of challenges we had, but we had to face that on a regular basis. Interesting part was there. I just stayed there because of Mr. Murthy and my opportunity. And after 6 months I joining, I wrote him an email saying, "Sir, would I get the honor to have you be my mentor?" People told me that he doesn't do that for people, but he did it for me, right? So I was a fortunate one to have him as one of my mentor for a few years, right? So that's the story of Infosys and Mr. Murthy. Mr. Murthy's story is so many things I will tell you that you can't even imagine. Maybe I'll share a couple of them for the audience. We used to sit in some meetings and we'll talk about, oh, market has become very competitive and so on. And his dialogue was, and he had a one-liner, right? Specific thing. He said, guys, let's accept this fact that market defines the price and we define the cost. So if the market is not giving the price, then you have to go and see how can you reduce cost. So you have to become more cost effective, and you have to be competitive, because you can't go and complain about it that somebody's giving you less, right? That's one way to look at it. Second thing he said, in the very interesting thing is, during a review, it related to this, but a little later. So he used to do his famous reviews of NRN reviews, right? So where the business unit head who's running a $3 billion business will have to come and make a presentation along with his team. And he would sit there and listen to those reviews, and then he will ask a really penetrating question that people will start. So somebody said, okay, we have done this for the customer. Is my scorecard, customer satisfaction, yes. And then he says, ask a question. He says, and this was a $300 million account, right? And he would go and say, hey, so you are telling me that you did everything that customer asked you to do. He said, yeah, we did everything customer asked you to do. He says, then why would customer give you this project tomorrow if somebody else offers the same deal at 20% less? So people didn't understand that. So he had then came out with another, he said, if you're not delivering more than the customer expecting from you, then you have always the risk of losing it to the guy who gives you lesser cost to the customer. Right? So that is where he brought a very interesting concept, which I became part of it. It's called BVA, Business Value Articulation Program. So he started with all the business unit in Infosys, saying that everybody has to come up with they're saying, what have they done more and beyond the customer asked them to do? Articulate that, get the case study done, and get it signed off by the customer. So in next 7 months, we had 300 case studies created in Infosys, where those programs, the customer has signed and said, yes, you created this value for me, which I didn't ask for you to do. And that eventually led to $700 million of benefit to the customers, cumulative. And that became the sales kit for the sales guys to go during negotiation when the renewal used to come, that we created this and you had signed off on this. Right? So you see how a leader of that stature and one thought leads to a initiative which can change the way you negotiate and deal with customers in going forward. Right? And then one more, in the interest of artists, I'll just share one more. He was very fond of something called individual productivity. And a lot of us have always heard of about team productivity, right? And we always believed that team productivity is more. But he had a very different concept. He said, guys, 20% of the people contribute to the 80% of the productivity of the team, right? But it's 20%. He says, and we are happy because 20% of those smart guys, good guys, actually, leading that change that whatever you're trying to do. He says, what if we could improve individual productivity of this? Means your 80% of people are below par. That's what his theory was. So he said, if I take 100 people and I put them in the expected productivity line, he said, then 20% of them will be above on the 90th percentile. Then there are other 50% people will be in the 50th or 70th percentile. And then there will be another 25% who are below 25th percentile, right? So he said, why don't we look at individual productivity? And if you look at those guys who are below, who are the 25th percentile or 50th percentile, if we work with them, if we knew the recipe, why the top 25% are so productive, if we know the recipe, and if we can go and ensure that these bottom people are trained to improve their productivity probably by another 25%, then what type of impact you will create to your top line, to your bottom line, your top line as well, and in customer satisfaction. So he started another initiative called Individual Productivity. We are very fortunate to have become part of that initiative as well. So I led that for him, called Individual Productivity. The interest of time, I'm not going there, but that again became one of the very unique thing that Mr. Murthy did it, and it changed the way we looked at team structure, team constitution, right? We used to look at skills of the people, right, rather than productivity of the people as a metric, right? So yeah, and then there are many stories, but I'll stop here.
I think that's an awesome insight into the operations management of a large company by a wonderful leader. And and now finally we come to the QNU labs, about which I'm sure the viewers must be waiting with bated breath to hear more about from you. Now, how exactly did you get the idea of founding QNU Labs in 2016? I ask this because, and this can be instructional, you were into the corporate world for nearly 30 years, working at one company after another. How come you suddenly dove into the world of entrepreneurship, and that too in such a deep tech area like quantum computing?
So, so it's so I'll tell you what happened because after Infosys, I worked for 5 years for a cybersecurity company where I was a partner, chief operating officer of something called Palladian Networks, um, um, and that company was the first company in India to have done AI and ML in cybersecurity, right? And I'm talking about 2016, right? Time frame. We built that and we launched that in 2008 2000 yes, no, it was done in 2014 15 because I became part of that in 2015, and so when I looked at cybersecurity, um, cybersecurity was absolutely um, deep. It is in shambles, right? um, it was reactive. It was People were spending money left and right, buying technology, product, services. It was not helping anybody. And when we used ML to machine learning to build models that could uh, do one of at that time the problem in cybersecurity, Prashant, was that people used to find the problem of detection and response, we call it, right? We used to detect, I would say, uh, the attacks, right? Very late, right? We call it cyber kill chain, right? Cyber kill chains will be detected very late when the attack has been already weaponized and so on, right? And then you're too late to take care of avoid that attack. Now you're in a response mode that okay, I'm screwed now. How quickly I can recover from that, right? Now, so this ML and AI came into picture. The idea was around early detection and faster response. People felt that if you do early detection, faster response, you will be able to take care of a lot of things. And it was true, right? Because the data was that uh, the most of the companies used to find uh, that I would say the breaches into the systems probably 100 days later, that when it actually happened. By the time a lot of damage was already done and so on. So if you could find a breach in your system in the next first 10 days or first 15 days, you could actually avoid a lot of potential right issues. So that was around that, and it worked well. It became talk of the we call it managed detection and response. Gartner renamed it, and but I still was not convinced about what we were doing because hackers have the same AI ML tools now. They are the better tools than the organization. So this was again enterprises bringing a knife to the gun battle. It would never win that game. So that is the time when I met these founders, right, of QuNu. And that was 2016, right? So what happened that time, Prashant, was uh, our prime minister had announced that India will move from a cash-based economy to digital economy. We had a Paytm, we had e-commerce, taxi for sure, Uber, Ola, all this thing. We're still doing a lot of digital transactions, right? Phone banking was already people were doing. And and you understand after demonetization, currency became less around that time, right? You couldn't do transaction of more than 20,000 rupees, something like that. So we realized that India is going to become probably one of the largest digital economy in the next decade or so. And it happened right now after 4 years, become the third largest economy, right? Fourth now. So we realized that a billion people are going to come onto the digital platforms doing all these things, what we're doing today. What about digital trust? Because there's no digital economy without digital trust. And when we looked at it, we found that digital resilience was missing in India, largely globally, but India, it was because it was reactive, patched up things, slow response, fragmented. We said India can't build a digital economy on this fragmented, broken. Fault lines were very visible, right, in that stuff. And we said India is heading for a disaster. And we saw an opportunity as well. Now, one of the stuff we said in drugs, we say in drug industry, drug in the sense that the medical industry, right, that even after spending so many, every year the people are still buying statins and uh, diabetics medicines and everything. Is industry is only getting bigger and bigger, but are the people getting healthier, right? Right? Is the wellness getting better? Answer is no, right? Similarly, in cybersecurity, when you said India spent $3 billion, $3.5 billion every year in products and services in cybersecurity. Globally is about $200 billion. Even after spending that, whenever you used to talk to any CISO, CIO, he will be extremely worried, right? At some point of time, some of the top companies CISO used to say, saying that they always have a resignation in their pocket because in the evening they found a breach has happened, they have to submit the resignation, right? That's the reason CISOs typical average life uh, job span of a job is only 2 to 3 years, right? So, and they always used to worry about it, what will happen anytime any bad news can come, right? Because nobody could be, was immune, right? Everybody was a part of it. So, so we felt that, and when we did the analysis, we realized that um, that that hackers have a better technology than the defenders. So the fundamental problem was that there is no, if there's no a technology advantage, right? Defenders have, then they will never be able to win this game. AI, we didn't choose AI because AI was already there. Hackers are the better tools. So idea was, how do we bring a future technology in? See, we always say in cybersecurity, you can't solve today's problem using yesterday's technology. I can't solve my water problem or a flood problem in the country using yesterday's technology, right? So, and there's a problem in cybersecurity. You are solving tomorrow's problem using today's technology, right? And that's what we hope to do. And then we are solving today's problem using yesterday's technology. We said, what if we could bring a futuristic technology today and we implement that with the help enterprises implement that, then we can probably change this game on its head. So we found quantum computing as one of the critical, most biggest emerging threat to the world that's going to happen in the 10 years. I'm talking about 2016, we said 2030 is about 14 years away. We felt that our scalable quantum computers will come, they will break every possible encryption. And I will probably explain later why they will be able to break that. But assume for the time they would be able to break every encryption that we have. This means every secret is out in public. If if they is come after 14 years, if we are able to bring a technology based on quantum physics itself, we build a new encryption that, and we take 5 years to implement and take another 3 years to implement, 8 years. We're still giving our enterprises 6 years advantage, right? Before hackers get access to the quantum computers to break the secrets. We said there's a great plan, right? If we could pull it off, right? Obviously, in India, nobody had done deep tech, nobody had done hardware, nobody had done quantum physics. So it was, I mean, when we started putting boxes, we put some parameters, we started doing, we had 9 crosses against 10 parameters. The only parameter that we had, which was green, was if this team can't do it, then nobody else can do it. Right? But other questions were, and in fact, I went to some of my friends over in United States and said, I'm going to do that. How's the idea? People said, Sunil, we thought you're a smart guy, but you come up with the most stupid idea. Right? And I said, okay, please educate me. Why do you think it's a stupid idea? He said, the reason is this, that you won't get people to do this in India. Nobody is going to give you money to do that in India. Even after you succeed by chance, but you're very less chance, even if you succeed in the first two, There's no market in India. You have to still come to United States or some other sense sell it. Then what is the point in doing it in India? And they were right. They were smart guys, so they were right. But the question there was, and as I said in the beginning, because I had some string attached to that, India has to show its prowess in deep tech, has to show in products. We had done that in C dot, but it was not a innovation, it was indigenization. C dot was largely, but India can do innovation as well. And we said, um, if this team can't do it, and we felt that with this government, new government had come at that time, the type of vibes we were getting, type of discussion we were having with them, we said probably this is the best chance India has. So we said, US में कोई भी कर सकता है. Then we said, okay, let's do that. Right? We are the fortunate to have a professor of IIT Madras, Sunil Prabhakar, as the founder who knew quantum physics, who knew all the intricacies of quantum tech, right? Um, and then I had another guy, Mark Mathias, who called the father of electronics, who did a computer for India. He's IIT Madras, top guy. So he was electronics guy. I was sort of a software engineering, system engineering, and a business guy. So playing that role. So, and there is where and then we had one more founder who was who's still a founder, and he's a wizard. He's a finance wizard, right? Uh, and he is a guy who could raise money. So we said, okay. So we said we divide the deep tech into 4 phases, right? Proof of tech, proof of product, proof of science, proof of tech, proof of business, proof of scale. So we said proof of science, professor will take care of it. How we understand quantum physics, we understand indicators, we come on. The proof of tech, uh, Mark Mathias and other CTO together will take care of it. Proof of business, I will come in and I say, okay, we can sell the product, get a customer who will pay us to use this. And then, of course, myself and the team will take care of how do we scale it to 100 customers, 1,000 customers, 10,000 customers, and so on. So we had our team formed in a manner where we created the roles for each other, specialization for each other, brought people together. Of course, they all chose me to be the CEO because they felt that I'm bringing a cross horizontal capability to the table. And that is where, so I became the founder and the CEO of that initiative. Um, there are a lot of stories there, but I keep going. But that is where it started. It was and I call it still, it was a great Indian experiment. It has 0.001% chances of success. But just because we were so passionate and were fortunate to have a policy tailwind from the government, we had a right set of people with us. Um, and somehow things fell in place and we could succeed. Um, but very happy about it, right? What happened. So, so it was a mission. We wanted to make sure we call it a born in India, made for the world. That was our vision, that India's first deep tech company who will build for India, strengthen India, and then sell it to the rest of the world. We also had a concept that time when we did, and that um, later on it came up, but I'll stop here and then maybe answer that later.
What an awesome story, Sunil. But
Yeah.
I've heard that the real R&D on quantum computing with qubits and so forth requires a very specialist hardware and a highly sophisticated lab for, let's say, the stability of qubits. So are you developing the hardware yourself? And please tell us what you can about your hardware capabilities, where you don't have to say I could tell you, but then I'll have to kill you.
So so you're right, but I'll tell you, there are two fields, right? So quantum computing, quantum tech field has a 4 verticals. One is quantum computing, where you build quantum computers. Then you have a quantum communication, where you build quantum security, right? Security against the quantum computers, right? So that's the way it is. Then you have a quantum sensing. Uh, Quantum sensing is all about using the same quantum physics to build sensors uh, who can find tunnels, who can find stealth aircrafts, who can find, uh, who can capture subtle signals, seismographic signals, and something that you can't imagine in the classical world, right? Very, very fine and deep. And then quantum materials, where you will use quantum principles to generate new materials that will change the world, right? So, so you're right. The quantum physics all around qubits, right? Um, so the qubits are by nature are very pure. I call them. That little bit of a noise disturbs the quantum state. They collapses, and there's the problem of coherence that we call it. Uh, eh, the qubits have to stay in a coherent state, in a quantum state for long enough for somebody to make use of it, right? So that's the reason quantum computers are still struggling to get the scalable quantum computers. While QuNu also uses qubits, but our problem is little simpler in the sense that I don't have to have qubits in a coherent state for very long, right? Compared to quantum computing. So just to give you an example, analogy for you, for audience to understand. If I ask you, Prashant, that I'm making a sketch of you, right? Or then I will ask you to stay in a position for long enough. If I'm taking 10 minutes, you'll find it difficult. You'll move and the sing and noise will come in, right? And after that, your position has changed. But if I have to take your picture with my camera, it's just 5 seconds. You will be able to stay still for 5 seconds without getting noise in the picture. So that's the way it is, right? Quantum computing is little longer. You need to be qubits needs to stay in a state for us to make use convert them into logical qubits and use logical qubits to do operations and so on. That's the reason it's challenging. But for me, it is much shorter. So, but thus I'm able to, because I generate keys, encryption keys, which are not nothing but a string of zeros and ones. And so as long as I get zeros and ones and I I'm able to remove the errors using my error correction algorithms, my job is done. Right? Of course, in order to do that, I have to build hardware. We have a very beautiful hardware that is built, conceptualized, designed, built in India. We have 10 patents for those products, the two hardware products that we have. We are going to do another 50 products. That's what is run by Dilip Singh, our HSS, your boss probably, right? You work for him. So he's our CTO now, and he has been running that today. So that is where so that's the thing we do, right? Of course, it's a challenging, but we have found ways to solve that problem. Yeah.
Okay. Now, on April 30, 2025, it was reported by various sources that QNU Labs has got a funding of rupees 60 crores or around 7.51 million dollars from government under the National Quantum Mission. Now, how important is this funding for you and what conditions does it come with? And furthermore, is it enough?
No, actually, we have not raised just seven. So far, we raised about 20 million, right, over the years, 9 years. Of course, we have been frugal company. We couldn't, as I told you, we will never get the money, right? It was so difficult. So first few years, nobody gives the money, right? And we knew that we are not going to get the money. So our strategy was very clearly for the first 3 years till we build the product and we get a customer, we'll build it on our own money, right? And then idea was that once we will go to the VCs and raise the money only when we get the first customer, right? So that was the idea. But we raised 20 million since then. Um, so this 7 million is part of the 20 million. So we raised 13 million so far, and then we did 7 million now. Why this is important, Prashant, is because this is the first time that Indian government has taken a public money and given to the private companies and taken a stake in it. So government has taken stake in our company. It is a very rare thing to happen. We are the first company in the probably in the history of India to have happened, right? And so the pro of this is benefit of this is we are now seen with a very different light when we go to the defense and government to sell this. We are seen as a government company. There's a trust there. Um, we are able to use that government channel to get access to right people, uh, get some benefits in terms of some of the projects, some of the selection in the projects. All that benefit happens. Um, now India's story is a very big story, right? Now the moment Indian government invest in a startup, you people get to the industry gets starts getting message that we are we are not supported by government and we are going to get a lot of government business, right? I think from revenue assurance perspective, that is a very good thing, right? People get a feeling now not supported by government, so they will not go bust, right? Government will not let that happen. So that is a good part of it. And that's what happened. We were initially expected to get only 25 crores from government. But the moment the government said that we are doing it, there are a lot of other people came forward. And in fact, I had to decline offer from several people. So we could not take money from everybody, but we could raise another 35 crores from so many other angels and VCs who are happy to become part of this journey, right? So is enough? Probably not for our journey. But we are now going to be profitable company this year. We will generate cash from our business. So this is a very important investment. We might do another one round in order for us to scale our business in new geographies because we are now present in United States as well as in Australia and a couple of other regions. So yes, we would probably need um, a few more $1 million. We'll decide when and how and from where.
Okay. I'm sure that must be music to the ears of the potential investors who must be waiting in the wings. But tell me something. It is very difficult, nearly impossible to recruit talent with knowledge of quantum computing since it is such a niche field still. And I wonder if it is taught yet in the universities at all. So how do you recruit people for running the company and what's the current strength of QNU Labs?
So we are about 120 people today. And um, so the way we have done this is obviously talent is a challenge. Um, but the fact is that we have almost zero attrition for the last few years, right? So, and the reason for that is, and I'll come to how we hire, because when we hire people, don't hire people as a job or the thing. We are very particular about people who are coming in, as I said, their ability to handle failure, people who are coming for long haul, they're not coming for project for 2 years and jump off. The people think that they're coming in, learning it, they have an opportunity to fail, right? People are paying, the company is paying for us to do experiments and do research where 90% of the time you could fail, right? So I think this is a very different approach to hiring. We, in fact, and we learned this from C dot as well as from HSS, we with a lot of our good people have come through internships. We have gone, see, imagine that a lot of people used to do physics in IIT with a very solid background, but they never had any opportunity. We hired some of the best people in who are doing masters in physics, who was doing PhD in physics, hired them as interns, and then brought them as employees, right? And quantum tech, Prashant, is also that everybody doesn't have to work in quantum, right? There are people we have about 10, 12 PhDs, right? Who work in information theory, quantum information theory. They are the ones who work in algorithms, technology, and science and other people. But there are a lot of other people who have to work in software, who have to convert science into tech. They have to still develop hardware, electronics, optics, software algorithms, correction algorithms, platform, everything else that they built, front end, back end, right? So there are a lot of people there that got to do a product development. But of course, we have a core, right, where we have the core technology, people who understand the quantum physics very well, quantum information science very well. All that people will still have. So it's a combination of so in quantum tech, Prashant, is never one skill; it's a multitude of skills. We have physicists, we have mathematicians, we have computer science, we have electronics, we have optics, right? We have network engineers, we have cybersecurity professionals. So it's a combination of many skills, right, that we bring together to form the team. Yeah, but of course we are different. That's a learning we have from Hughes. Um, we give them very different environment, culture. Credit goes to Dilip and his team and everybody else. That our core team has huge strength. Um, um, yeah, so that's the way it is. It's not easy, but yes. Fortunately, lately, a lot of people are, and especially my leadership team. I've hired recently a head of sales and also a few other people who was joining QuNu with a lesser salary, much lesser salary than what getting in the top-notch companies, just to be part of QuNu and this quantum journey, right? So we also get those people who are thinking that this is probably one of the best thing happening in India and they want to be part of this journey.
Right.
So
And you
you're most welcome, Prashant.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, right. Absolutely. And, thanks, for the open offer. But you brought in Sunil Sood as the CEO of the company, didn't you? It is odd. The CEO of a deep tech company like yours is arguably the most famous people's manager from Hughes Software Systems. What was the real reason for making Sunil Sood as the
So,
CEO of the company?
no, so
What
what
was it?
happened? No.
Yeah,
So what?
I want to ask a little bit further. Was it to do
No.
some window dressing for attracting the Indian Armed Forces, and in particular the Indian Navy as your customer? After all, Sunil Sood is an ex-Indian Navy veteran, isn't he?
So what happened is uh, uh, our early customer was adopter was Indian Defense, right? Army, Indian Armed Forces. So obviously, I was doing that, leading that. And some point of time, I realized that now it is not only is one-two opportunity, but is a full-fledged business for us. So we created another entity within QNews called DEFCOM, Defense Communication. And because defense communication was only a defense business, so it is a 100-owned subsidiary for QNew Labs. That is where we got Captain Su to become the CEO of that entity. So he's a CEO of our defense unit. Uh, and obviously for the reason that he's a well-respected officer in Navy, everybody, even the current CDS is junior to him, right? Chief of Staff. So you imagine his seniority where everybody look up to him with respect. And obviously he's a great relationship guy, right? And already is a great people manager. So I think it is not for a window dressing. It's just because Sunil Sood was the best candidate for us. He was our ex-colleague, and that's the way it happened, right? So going back and looking at some of our people and in Captain Su's team itself, I have JB Singh, who was who used to work for me in CDOT in 1990. So we brought some of those guys. Then we got Dilip Singh join us. Now our latest addition is Nidhi Agarwal, right? In QNU. Captain Su came in, of course. And yeah, and few more people, right? So that's the way. So that was the
Uh,
idea that the defense unit should be headed by the defense guys, not by a civilian.
Awesome, and I'm a great fan of Captain Sunil Sood myself. But here's something interesting. As per an article from Business Standard on May 19th, 2025, and I quote, Sunil Gupta is obsessed with data security and privacy. He doesn't use Facebook or Instagram and changes his passwords frequently on various online platforms. He has put a tape on the camera of his laptop, which mercifully removed just now for this interview, and never uses free Wi Fi at airports and hotels. It is this kind of obsession that has made the
So
54-year-old
yeah.
ingenious company QNU Labs the only firm in the country to successfully develop quantum cybersecurity products, unquote. Now, how true is this article from Business Standard regarding your online habits?
So this is a long time ago, not recent, right? It was when I was on the other cybersecurity company, if I remember. So I might be mistaken, right? But I'll tell you what happened. I'm not that obsessed now because of different reasons. But I'll tell you that was a time when one of my friend whom I knew was a CISO of an organization. He checked into a hotel in Mumbai. He was attending to a leadership call. He was on a phone. He goes into the hotel room. He puts his bag down. He opens up his laptop. He's the first Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi, which is not the hotel Wi-Fi, but something else with a higher strength, signal strength. He logs onto that. He gets into the call. 3 days later, all the software from his organization is wiped out because somebody had put a wireless network in the hotel in the lobby. He accessed that. put a malware in his system. When he connected in his network, in the office network, malware stole all the information data. He had to quit. Several other things that I have heard. I'm just telling you one story. And that is a time when I also felt I used to use Windows system. My system got slower. I felt that even when I'm not using camera, the camera light would be on, right? So I always felt that there was a malware sitting there, is continuously background looking at things. It's not that I was doing some fishy things in front of camera, but I felt that we need to be a little bit more secure, and that is where there was a time when I did that, right? So then I heard the story from a friend. I stopped using, started using hotspot of my phone, and then few other things that I started doing, and yeah, so that was a phase I would tell Prashant when I was really paranoid about these things, but. But I think it has changed. And then also happened around that time when suddenly my friends started calling me and saying, "Hey, you're asking for money on the Facebook." And I realized somebody had hacked into my Facebook, started asking. Then I have to close that Facebook. I never use Facebook. None of you would ever find me in Facebook. I've never used it in my life. Of course, I had that. Um, Instagram, I never used it till lately, right? I started doing now because it's something that I use for. But yes, I've been paranoid about some of these things. Prevention is always better than few things. But now with me moving to Mac and few other devices that I use, now we use some of our own applications we have started using, which will give a quantum level of security on our devices. We'll probably be far more relaxed.
Perfect. And where do you see our country's positioning in quantum computing vis-a-vis the Silicon Valley, and more importantly, with respect to our enemy's friend called China? And furthermore, what is your vision for QNU Labs for the next 5 to 10 years?
See, what we are trying to build in QNU, Prashant, is that we are trying to build as we call iron dome, right? Which Israel built for missiles to prevent themselves from missile attack. We believe that in today's world, the first attack is never is not traditional attack, right? It's always cyber attack. So we are trying to build um, we call it proactive immunity, right? Um, uh, so against the future threats. So what we are trying to build is a quantum shield. And that's what our platform is also called, Q Shield. And this platform, Q Shield, is built for India and of course built for the world as well, but a different brand name. So Q Shield is sort of a quantum dome for India to protect its critical infrastructure from attack, right? Um, Even if somebody is able to attack it, but they will not be able to take anything out meaningfully from that attack, right? It's like saying I do an attack, I get in there, I attack a village, I get in there and say there's nobody there, or there's nothing there for me to steal. So I think that's what we are trying to build. Whether it is and we have taken an end-to-end approach because we believe that cybersecurity is holistic, is not patchy, which means that endpoint security, whether mobile devices, laptops, network security, edge security, cloud security, whether you achieve it through fiber optics, you achieve it through Wi-Fi links or satellite networks, we protect everything today, right? So that's the whole idea is give India its own sovereign technology, which is unhackable, unpenetratable. And as we go along, our vision is that, as I said, our world's most secure digital economy, right? And then think about it, right? India gave us pandemic vaccine diplomacy where we built our own indigenous vaccine. We did it. We vaccinated our own people and then we gave it to the world. Our vision is that same thing for QNU, that for cybersecurity pandemic, we have our own technology, implement all over our critical infrastructure, most of the critical sectors in India. Then we give this technology as a diplomacy, another quantum vaccine to rest of the world to immune themselves against these threats. So we want to be the the go-to place, go-to country, India, and QuNu as a go-to company for all these uh, uh, new technology solutions and products to protect themselves. That's
And more
remarkable.
power to you, Sunil, for that. And but tell me, when you're away from the world of deep tech, the CNOT and the Hadamard gates, and the quantum entanglements and corporate meetings, how do you unwind? Please tell us some of your hobbies or likings, and perhaps something about your family while you are at that.
So quantum is not actually, if you ask me, my view is that we all are always in the quantum field, right? The world universe is quantum in nature, right? And and we are always entangled. I'm always entangled with another myself, right? Which I always aspire to be. And that's what people say that you don't manifest. That people try to manifest by saying words, by doing prayers and so on. But in the quantum world, what we believe is that you are already entangled with as your superior self, right? Which is what you desire to be, right? And the only way to get there is coherence. If you are in coherent means frequency and alignment, and which we talk about intention, feeling, and action. If you are, and that's what happens. And when we say HS is a great company, it's just because, and we talk about culture, but actually, if you see it is intent, feelings, and actions were all aligned together, right? Everybody was aligned. That's the reason that what happens. So we believe that if you are always in entanglement with your better self, and if you just try to be align yourself to that frequency and that coherence, then you get what you get, right? So frankly speaking, my all my time goes in trying to be trying to get aligned with my environment, trying to get aligned with whatever we're trying to do. Is a very interesting field. I of course don't get time, but I used to do play a lot earlier. I was a big sports fan. I used to watch cricket a lot. I don't used to do. I had to manage with the highlights. Um, I was a 8 hour sleep guy, and now I get about 4 hours sleep, but it's enough for me right now. Of course, I think the biggest sacrifice my family has to do because a lot of travel that I have to do now. But I would say that they also understand that what we am trying to do, that they also entangled with me in that journey. So they understand this, that what is happening. And yes, they have to at times sacrifice, you know, they, yeah. But that's what the life is when you're trying to build something. But my unwinding is still um, reading something lighter. I still watch movies because, but my perspective on movies have changed. Um, I still start look at the movies very differently, and yeah, just enjoy. Right, I just relax on the weekend for a few hours, reading, writing, and other things that we have to do. Yeah, I think, Prashant, when you are in that zone, right, which myself, Dilip, and as captain, and many others are in QuNu, I think you don't need an unwinding. I mean, it is not a stress as a stress, right? When you're trying to achieve something, we are not trying to push, we're not trying to create friction with something that we're doing. We're trying to be aligned and in coherence with something, right? When you try to align and be coherent with something, you don't have stress, right? Um, yeah, so I don't think that there is I mean, winding happens all the time, and winding as well.
That was deep, Sunil, and I wish you and everybody at QNU Labs enjoy their quantum states and never collapse. It was a pleasure talking to you, Sunil. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have been, thanks for watching. We have been in a candid and a delightful conversation with the co-founder of QNU Labs, the country's vanguard at quantum computing technology, Sunil Gupta.
Thank you, Prashant, for having me on your podcast. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Sunil.
Thank you. Bye bye.